working on my graphic novel, Ricky B, the Rock and Roll, well, Ricky B Goes to Sea, featuring the character Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat. And I just have to check that. Cool. Just always got to make sure that I've got audio going. So there's my streaming schedule for anyone who may be new. And yeah. Last week, we left off in Ricky's boss was in Paris. His boss, Big Mike, and Mrs. Mike got a sneak peek at his phone. Well, I guess it's not that sneak if she did it in front of him, but she sneaked it out of his pocket, saw some text messages, and wasn't too thrilled. Well, I mean, we see her name's Brandy, by the way. We see Brandy and her declaration there and anger. And then it turned into, I'll make that prick pay one way or another. And that leads into the first page we're going to be inking tonight, which is an ad for Diorat. I was looking through some old, these are the ones we'll do after. I was looking through some old 1990s fashion ads for Dior and whatnot. It was kind of fun to look and go like, I remember that one. I remember that one too. Back when I used to read crap like Cosmopolitan. Anyways, so I've got my little shotgun glass full of India ink. I use Demco if anybody cares. That's just my personal preference. I used Speedball Super Black for years and years and years. I've talked about that on the stream before. But anyways, we are going to be, let's get this one inked. We're going to start with a fairly thin nib. This is the, I think the Hunt 513 EF, if anybody cares. I actually had ordered online about a dozen of these because they're kind of hard to, well, I have not really seen them in stores in person in a long time, but I did find a source online. And the package, I think, actually arrived this morning. I just haven't had a chance to open it up. And hello there, Win. Fortunately, I don't read Japanese to know the first part of your name, but welcome to the stream. And so we're going to start with just outlining a couple of the letters, and then I'll fill them in. I usually work top left. Hello, Deep Sheik Hagarwal. I hope I said that right. Welcome. You are watching all the way from India. Welcome to the stream. So we're going to start kind of top left, working our way down. And I would expect this particular page probably going to take about 45 minutes is my guess. That's usually how much time one with this size of an image and detail takes. So we are going to chip away at it. And the idea with this is these ad pages are kind of like a B story. I found out, like, my background in comics is more from, growing up reading like newspaper comics and whatnot. So it wasn't, and then later alternative comics and graphic novels. So it wasn't until much later when I found out, and I think they may even still do this, but the old Golden Age comics all had ads throughout. Like, it might even be like Superman as part of the ad, shilling for whatever product. So I thought that was kind of fun to play with. And they end up forming a B story. You know how nowadays, of course, we've all got to deal with intrusive ads and, social media algorithm figuring out based on the stuff we talk about with our friends, what ads to serve up and all this sort of stuff. So in the B story, we're starting out with these ads just randomly popping up that relate to things in the main story. For example, Brandy in our last page, she's got a Diorat bag. Diorat is one of the overpriced fashion brands where she ran up Big Mike's credit card in revenge. So now we're seeing an ad from them. And I think it's another, I don't know, 6, 7, 10 pages when suddenly the main character of the story, Ricky, is going to notice all these ads and start asking some questions. So that'll become our B story. But for now, it's just kind of like seemingly random interruptions. And this ad is based, it's kind of like a combo of a few different ads I saw for Dior from the 1990s. Um, like the necklace and the kind of oversized jacket was one, and then, the girls with the big oversized shades, those were several other ones, and jewelry and all that. So I kind of put them all together into one kind of super ad, I guess. Showing all the things that Brandy might have spent Big Mike's money on in Paris. Now, I did draw this serif type by hand and just kind of eyeballing it. But Dior does, and I think they did anyways, and I'm pretty sure they still do use a sort of a similar serif font for their marketing and branding. So long, long time ago, like almost 20 years ago, actually about 20 years ago, I used to do a lot. I was really interested in hand-drawn typography and whatnot, and did a lot of this sort of stuff in my sketchbook, and making up my own fonts and all that sort of stuff. Well, not so much fonts, but what would have been fonts had I digitized them. Um, it was kind of a bit of a hipster trend thing at the time, and then it went away, and then it's kind of stuck around. I mean, nowadays, of course, you see a lot of businesses aimed at millennials and younger, where the branding is kind of trying to look like it's something out of, an imaginary version of the 1800s or whatever. But it's kind of fun. Um, I get the sense that that kind of got into kind of hipster culture and then moved from there into the mainstream. Why is it Diorat? Well, because of course these characters are all rats, or rat people, so it kind of fit. Just a little bit wider. Actually, wasn't sure if I was gonna be doing this page tonight or if I'd have to skip it and come back to it. Went and ran some errands in the next city over, so an hour's drive away today, and I didn't get back home until about 5 p.m. So it's like, ooh, am I gonna make it? But I did. So there we go. Now to start drawing the model. Well, first we have to specify that this is Paris. Some of the fashion ads, you'd see like a list of where they had flagship stores. So it would say like Paris, London, New York, or whatever. Debated doing like Paris, London, Ratsville, but I thought, yeah, you know what? Let's leave it. Let's leave it as just Paris. Uh, Of course, rats have claws, so her fingers are weirdly long, but you know, they Photoshop things in fashion ads a lot. I remember seeing even a long time ago, a news documentary talking about. I think probably the first time I heard of Photoshop was this documentary talking about like women's body image and stuff, and they were showing an a photo that they took of Cindy Crawford, and I'll kind of do a rough sketch. Let that sit and dry for a moment. Where Cindy was, do this with a different. I'll just do this with a little regular pen. But anyways, Cindy was kind of had her head up like this, and you know the long hair and all this. Top like that, arm like that, and then torso, and then she had kind of her legs like that. So wearing some kind of high heels or whatever, and pants. And Cindy has long legs, right? But what they actually did in the Photoshop, and I guess she was resting her hand on, or no, she was resting her hand, I think, like this. Yeah, because otherwise it would have been too freakishly obvious. So never mind that. What they did basically in Photoshop was they duplicated the layer and then they sliced it here and here. Or it might have been the liquefy tool, but I think they froze it basically in those spots and then they stretched it. So what it ended up being was Cindy looking like that. Oops. Arm like that. Down and then like that. Like this is slightly an exaggeration, but not by much. Like they stretched her legs out to like that. Well, I guess they're about like that, but they would have made her about, you know, if that happened, if she had been human, she would have, like, if it was a human with the proportions in the photo, if the photo was real, she would have been like a foot taller than Cindy Crawford, and the foot would have all been in legs. So, like, that sort of stuff I remember hearing about even at that point. Anyways, that's kind of neither here nor there, but my point is, we're just going to assume that when I make the fingers on this model extra long and almost creepy like, that's because maybe they photoshopped them in the rat world and made them extra long and weird. Anyways, so I'll just add a little bit of shading. And then green's gonna go like that. Now let's move on to this model's face. Of course, she's a rat lady, so she's got the big round ears. Crazy heavy diamond earrings. We see pictures of like Princess Catherine or Kate Middleton, you know, and wearing these massive earrings like this. And I always wonder, how does that not just rip out? I have heard some people say that I guess a trick is you put a small Band-Aid on the back of your ear from kind of from the top going down, and then when you put your earring in, it goes through, especially if it's like a fabric earring or fabric Band-Aid, it goes through that and then that supports the thing. But even so, it would still pull on your entire ear then, just not specifically your earlobe. But I don't know. I also heard of some earrings where they actually have a teeny tiny thin chain that goes around, so it's the same sort of idea, although I've never seen that in photos of like Kate Middleton or whatnot. So I don't know. But and I guess if it's a model like this, probably she wasn't actually wearing them very long. I got something going on that's halfway between a Farrah Fawcett hairdo and a mullet. As I draw in her eyes, I'm going to grab the crow quill pen and get some really fine lines to kind of give the sense of those being dark glasses. So that nib needs to soak. So let's bring in this. Some days this quill, this nib does not want to draw at all. Mind you, these don't need to be really dark glasses, but you know, even just a few lines kind of give the sense of it. But I would like it to actually put some lines in. So what the hell? Some days. And I used this exact nib on Wednesday. It was fine. But it's starting to do some lines in a very scratchy sort of a way, though. But I think it gives the sense that those are dark glasses, so. Managed to catch a drip wanting to come off the bottom of this pen, so that was a good catch. Got to draw in the whiskers. That one's a little. Kind of always want to have the whisker come in one single stroke, but sometimes with the pens, they don't quite. Anyways. This lady has had way too much in the way of fillers. Just my opinion. Do what makes you happy, but you know. Some things just don't look as good as you think. Anyways. Giving her more a heavier eyeshadow look because then I think that's going to balance out the lips a little. I know the advice is always kind of for women like, oh, just do one or the other. If you do a really heavy lip, then leave your eyes light. It's like that works at times, and sometimes then it just looks kind of out of focus or out of balance. So, anyways, there we go. Now to continue on with her hair. And a lot of the kind of sparkle that I put around the diamonds is, of course, going to vanish, but some of it will stay. Are we having this kind of a day with the nibs? Mind you, when I look at this, I think the paper is, and I've complained about it before, but the Canson XL recycled Bristol board paper, this is what that looks like. The rest of the book is on Strathmore Smooth Bristol, and the pen nib kind of glides a little more, but I do remember when I was kind of doing a lot more stuff with the recycled Bristol that this was a more common problem where it would just kind of cut in and then anyways, that's my problem, right? I am going to bring in a fatter nib towards the end, and we'll kind of go over some of these lines. So it'll, right now things are kind of looking a little samey same. With line weight will end up being separated out with the fatter nib. So, of course, she is a rat, so she needs her tail. The ad that this was kind of inspired by, it looked like it was like a wool tweed coat, but like with a really big kind of shawl collar. So we're going to go with something similar here. Now, how am I going to... I don't think I'm going to worry too much about like really conveying that it's tweed, because that's going to be very kind of quite difficult to do convincingly in just black and white, unless I'm like doing really teeny tiny like texture lines. And even that's going to just look more speckled. So we'll just kind of put in shading lines and whatnot and not worry too much about that. The nib is really scratching in and pulling up a lot of fiber out of the paper. So that's why I'm not buying more of that particular recycled Bristol board. Plus it's like quote unquote vellum surface. And vellum surface I always find, if you're doing markers or whatnot, it's fine. For dip pens, I tend to find that they really gouge in on the recycled, or they kind of stay over top like some of these, and then it doesn't quite drop the ink where you want it. Probably to even things out, I'll end up coming in and again using the fatter nib, but I don't want to completely black it out, but I also don't want it areas to be too plain white, because it's not a white coat. So we're going to put in kind of some layers of lines and texture here, like I'm doing right now. And then when we come in with the fatter nib, you know, we've already got this kind of texture built. So in areas where I don't have the fatter nib, we have this other kind of crisscrossy texture that's going to look a little bit like weaving. This is definitely one of those trust the process kind of moments. And hey, worst case scenario, there's always the option of just blacking it out and going like, okay, it's a black coat now. But you try and avoid that. You can see it's not really connecting at the beginning of the strokes, and the midway it goes, and there's like a little ball of fiber on the end of the nib, which is all just slowly been kind of ripped out of the paper. So the moral of the story, at least if you want to take advice from me, is if you're working with a dip pen, do get the smooth Bristol board. I'm sure there'd be some people who say, no, the vellum surface is fine. It's like, well, maybe they draw a little differently. Maybe they use a different nib, you know, whatever works for you. But I have found that the recycled vellum surface Bristol board does not work well for this sort of thing. It's fine for like marker drawings and whatnot, but not for this kind of a pen. do have paper towel off to the side. I'm kind of wiping the tip to try and get the excess crud off. But anyways, you're going to take a pause from that to draw in her necklace. In the one ad that I'm thinking of, it was like, kind of looked almost like antique cameos that were quite large, but then with filigree and pearls and stuff around it. So I'm not gonna try too hard to show what might be in the cameos, but we'll kind of get the sense that maybe it's cameos. That kind of gives a little bit of a sense that the main color is cameos, and then it did have a couple of little like drops. My mother actually quite liked cameos, and she had a small collection of them. Most of hers were really small though. Um, some that she bought like basically new in jewelry stores at the mall. Um, so probably not the most valuable ones. And then a friend of hers who did a lot of like flea market type of stuff and knew that she liked them had found some really reasonably priced cameos. This would be back in like the 90s or something, and gave them to my mom. So I actually have that collection upstairs in my bedroom because I got my mom's jewelry when she passed. So I actually don't really wear. Well, I used to wear a lot more jewelry, including and often like big statement pieces. Even if they like this would be an expensive one because it's based on one that's from Dior, which would have cost a fortune. But I do a lot of like costume jewelry and stuff like that. But I found I haven't really worn much lately. I'm gonna kind of assume that this model hasn't got the biggest of boobs because models tend not to. But she isn't wearing anything underneath there, so the cameo drop's going down between the cleavage. So, um, anyways, now we are back to texturizing this coat. I do want to kind of have a line on the clutch bag. It should be a little more like that. Oh, how foolish of me. I forgot to draw that she's wearing a ton of rings. I guess they don't all have big stones. Some of them are just like bands. think he's at a bit of a weird angle, but that's fine. So we go back to lots of little lines. It's going better on this side, but also the pen's still skipping. Like that's mostly skipping in that area. That's something that I kind of noticed in general with the, again, with the rougher surfaces on Bristol. The annoying thing is I can see almost like a shiny line where it does kind of scrape the paper, but it doesn't put down ink. But anyways, what did we learn? We learned not to buy the XL recycled Bristol board, even though it has a bright lime green cover, and we like bright colors, but no. Funny thing is, this is actually making it look a little bit tweed. The collarbone, although it's kind of not necessarily going to make that much sense. It's just going to look like part of the necklace there, but that's fine. Getting ready to start another small project in the Ricky verse, where it's going to be actually based on a story that I had when I was doing Ricky as a podcast a couple years ago, having to do with Thanksgiving, because I figure by the time I actually get it done, that's what's going to be current. But it involves Ricky going, Ricky's Thanksgiving at his girlfriend's place, and the girlfriend is from a rich family. So I was thinking, like, I was actually doing some like searching earlier for, like old money type ways of dressing, which is definitely, this is new money ways of dressing. This is not old money ways of dressing. But anyways, it's kind of a fun little Google while I was having lunch today. Mostly, actually, I was kind of looking more for the men. Like Miles, of course, is in that family. So what Miles wears, but Miles also is his own little weirdo. So Ricky, well, Ricky is a punk rock dude who comes from a not rich family. So he kind of doesn't quite fit in. Like that. So yeah, she's going to do. If I hold that up, I don't know if that shows too well, but there is like a gob of paper fiber that builds up on the very tip. Anyways, we keep wiping it off, that's all. And then it keeps building up again. Alrighty, that's come back. Funny, that is looking more and more as if it was an actual tweed jacket. So, anyways, when I come back with the bigger, fatter nib, we may probably darken up some areas. Now, do want to give her roots a little. I will make her whiskers a thicker line so that they stand out more. And she's got a clutch purse. Now the underdrawing of this is done with a non-photo blue pencil, which means that when I scan this page in black and white, the underdrawing should disappear. So areas where it didn't quite match what was actually drawn, we don't need to worry about that. I'll fix that T in Photoshop because it's a little bit too thick. Pen kind of did something weird, but oh well. going to expand the slogan to pay up because that fills the width. Just debating. I think what I might do is have the clutch be black. So then I'm going to do this, where this will not be black, but some kind of a shading. And so that's the basic drawing. Now we're going to take a fatter nib and do some expansion on here. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm actually going to flip her upside down so that I can do it, is we are going to expand her whiskers, make them a little thicker. Didn't mean to go that thick. That is definitely going to be a fix in Photoshop, probably. It happens. And just gonna put face, jaw, because that was not supposed to happen there. The one issue with trying to do this all in like one shot on a live stream is that sometimes, you know, when the ink underneath, even though it's dry to the touch, it's not as perfectly dry, and it almost like the other nib kind of gets stuck in it. And then the paper goes whoosh, and you get that. But it's okay. It can all be fixed. Just see, I'm kind of trying to darken it up, but not completely black it out. So all the line work I did earlier is still going to show. Hey, Pavel. How's it going? Haven't seen you in a while. How are you still traveling around the Southwest? It's a beautiful country out there. Doing parodies of Dior um, fashion ads for my little story with the rats. Because the main rat, Ricky, his boss's wife, decided to get a revenge with his credit card, and Diorat was one of the places. So, and also trying to sort of render as well, relatively speaking. Did a gig last week in Jersey, UK. Oh, nice! You got to see the famous cows, I guess. The Jersey cows are supposed to be. Well, I don't know if they're supposed to actually be like the best milk cows, but I've heard a lot of people say the milk is particularly good from them. I guess that's where they're originally bred, eh? Me, I'm just fighting with the nibs, but I think it's also this paper, which I complained about that earlier, but I learned my lesson about certain types of Bristol surfaces for this kind of work. But it's actually kind of working because it's this or this coat's supposed to be kind of a tweed, so it's kind of getting that broken up kind of surface. It's, it's also kind of a bit of a workout, but all right, side of that. Having to tilt my head in weird ways to try and get a sense of where my outline is on this, but I think I got that basically right. Or at least it looks good when I look at the stream on my laptop. It looks like I've got it right. So. Almost done the jacket, which means then we will be done this page, and then we go back to the main story. Oh yeah, I guess I got to fill in the handbag as well, but that'll be relatively easy. wonder if this is going to be one of the streams where the nib is the scratching sound from the nib picks up in the mic. Every so often, when I'm looking through for timestamps and whatnot, I find that you can actually hear that. I don't know if it's a enjoyable sound, but I guess it's an authentic one. And then other times the nib kind of glides and you don't hear it at all. But I think that jacket's looking pretty good now. Cool. Now let's work on filling in this little clutch. Sometimes for an area like this, if I want it really flat black, I'll go with applying the ink with a little brush, but the little brush in question tends to want to splat out a bit. And also this is supposed to be a leather clutch, so a little bit of unevenness in tone kind of works, in my opinion. All right, so our Diorat, pardon me, the Diorat ad is done. Obviously, there's a couple spots I will have to Photoshop. So now we can move on back to the story, as I find somewhere to stick this where it won't fall and get smudged. So, Big Mike last week had a big fight with Mrs. Mike. And therefore, when he gets back from the vacation in Paris, he decides he is going to take it out on the studio staff at Rat Trap Studios, which is his recording studios. Big Mike, in case anybody's new and doesn't know the backstory, Big Mike is supposed to be a big-time record producer. He's worked with the likes of the Rat World version of Bon Jovi and all these other massive, massive bands. And Ricky ended up working for him because Ricky used to hang out in the back alley of Big Mike's studio. and try and get autographs. And one day, instead of chasing Ricky away, Big Mike had just fired his intern and told Ricky if he was going to hang out like a bum all day, he might as well come in and mop the effing floors. And Ricky said okay, and then so ever since then, Ricky has been working in showbiz. So I'm going to first box out these narration bits. Because when I first drew them, I was thinking if I wouldn't do that unless there were other dialogue, but I think stylistically I'm going to fix that with all the narration. So we are going to use a medium-sized nib and just draw. For this one, this one's easy. We just draw a straight line. And I have to shut up or else it won't be a very straight line. There we go. And kind of just have to be careful that I don't smudge these as I work on this area. But I think this is small enough that I'll be able to get away with it. This one I won't do until the one at the bottom here where Ricky says, I told you about that, right? I won't do that one until the end. Same with this one. This one is actually going to be a smaller nib because it's not really narration. It's more like a label. So these are all the little details that I kind of didn't think about when I was drawing this book, but I know for the next graphic novel, I will take that stuff into consideration right from day one when I'm planning layout and whatnot in a way that I really didn't this time. So this is a little bit based on, not quite this part, but definitely some recording studios I had the occasion to record in back in the day. It's not uncommon to see things like just like plywood boxed in stairs with no handrail. I mean, the high-end studios, no, because they do the whole thing. But if it's like somebody having a kind of a DIY, even if it's a professional level DIY studio, sometimes things, let's just say there's no there's no building inspectors who come by these things after, at least not at that point, right? So and the idea of a storage loft I'm specifically taking from the old Mushroom Studios. In the live room there was a very kind of a rickety back. It was kind of like it was stairs, but it was also kind of almost like a ladder, like one of those kind of in between things. And then there were a bunch of like drum, old snare drums and stuff hidden up there. And I remember looking at, and also some amplifiers. I remember looking up there going like, how in the F? Yeah, especially with the amps. It's like how do you get them up there? Well, the up there isn't as bad because you're facing forward. How do you get them out of there without missing a step and falling to your death? Anyways, these stairs are actually, I mentioned the next Ricky project involving Thanksgiving. Let's just say that a similar set of stairs, not this one, because this is, it's, you go through the live room to this one, but there is a basement in Big Mike's studio, and the basement of Big Mike's studio is reached by a similarly questionable set of stairs. So we'll just leave that for now. We will eventually illustrate those stairs at a later date, probably in a month and a half, because I don't think it doesn't come up until about 2/3 of the way through the story. So I think it's like illustration number 20 or something is where we have that. And the other thing with these, you remember, the kind of Sometimes they're called tapestries, but they're not tapestries. They're just printed sheets, bed sheets, basically, that you see in stoner shops and um, rock shops and whatnot. Like I'm thinking there is actually a store called the Rock Shop in Vancouver. It's like it sells band T-shirts and whatnot, but it also would have giant quote unquote tapestry banners, and they would have giant pictures of mushrooms or the weed, marijuana leaf and all that sort of stuff. And anyways, the one of the studios that I learned in back in the day, the downstairs isolation booth had, it wasn't a weed one, but it was like a tree of life kind of cotton tapestry, kind of a psychedelic kind of looking thing. Let me see. I am not really a weed smoker, so I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be drawing this cannabis leaf correctly, but I'm sure if I get it wrong, people will tell me in the comments or in the chat. I did kind of look online. And of course, I'm from Vancouver, so, half of Vancouver is 420, dude. So, guess I could ask. I don't want to snitch on anyone, and it is legal in Canada. But I do believe that one of my neighbors, every so often in the summer, will go out to water my garden and I catch a whiff of marijuana. And one time I kind of looked, I was like, oh, because it didn't smell like smoke, but it smelled like weed. And then I just sort of saw through the fence. It's like, oh, somebody's got homegrown in a big old pot. Pot in a pot. Anyways, I think you're allowed to grow is it 4 plants or something? I don't know, but it's to the point where our local fall fair actually has like a homegrown cannabis section in it's kind of like the hall exhibit. So, there's a division called From the Garden, that's homegrown vegetables, and then there's From the Kitchen, you know, homegrown homemade apple pies and stuff, and then there's a flower division, which logically would be also From the Garden, but it's its own division because it's a massive undertaking. Like one of my friends from the garden club managed just the vegetables. I think just her section was something like 600 entries last year. And then the flower section has both flower arrangements and dahlias from your garden type of thing, like a garden flower show, and that I think was another 200 and some odd entries. Like it is crazy amount of work. Basically, they take up 2/3 of the inside of the hall at my local fair, which is bigger than a school gymnasium. In fact, if I could be wrong, but I think it's actually double the size of a school gymnasium. But anyways, they do have, ever since weed was legalized in Canada, I think it was the summer after that, they started having a homegrown cannabis thing. I have no idea how it's judged. I think it's on aesthetics. I don't think they actually smoke it. Um, so it's kind of like, what does it look like and whatnot? But it's in a locked case, which actually reminds me, I'm working on a painting that I want to put into the Couch and exhibition this year for the Fine Arts division, which is going to be Ricky, the hero of this comic book. Ricky has heard that there is a homegrown cannabis section. He may also be under the impression that there is a homemade cheese section. There isn't actually a cheese making section. There might have been in the 1950s or something, but there isn't now. Anyways, so he makes himself the background is a photo I actually took in our hall with our fair banners and all this. But Ricky is walking up through the flower show towards, if you're familiar with the local fair, you will know that where he is walking to is where they have the homegrown cannabis section. Anyways, Ricky has made himself a badge that says official judge. Now, Ricky's not really one for book learning. So the way it's spelled is that pen I don't want to try and write with. He has spelled it. He's pointing at it and he smiles and all this. And anyways, it's very tempted to title that painting "Take Me to Your Weeds" section, but I think I'm just going to, because it's a family-friendly event, I'm going to, I think, say that the title is "Take Me to Your Cheese" section. Actually, I think I did some videos actually starting the painting earlier this year, so if you go digging back through the videos tab on my channel, you'll probably find the I think the painting, it's like Paint with Pura official judge. Anyways, it's kind of not any further along than the last time I did a video about that. Because I've been working so much on the graphic novels and the coloring books and stuff. But I do need to, that needs to be like my Sunday project for the next couple of months, is just get that thing done. Gotta remember to be careful because I need to have this has got to be in front, right? So I gotta kind of be working back and forth a little bit. But anyways, I'm gonna assume that there's some nasty shag carpet back there. Mushroom Studios was eventually sold because, because the city of Vancouver are vultures is kind of the thing, but because it was a commercial property, and it was like in an area that they want to turn into condo land. I knew the guy who owned it, but it got to the point where his property taxes were like $50,000 a year. And even as a top level studio that was always fully booked, they really didn't. The margins actually you'd be surprised, they weren't that great. Like just kind of to the point where in order to keep the studio alive, because dude also ran a different recording studio, and then he had bought Mushroom when the previous owner also wanted out of it. And the guy I knew had run it for I think 5 or 6 years, but he kind of got to the point where he just had no choice. It's like, okay, I'm going to go bankrupt and out of business if I stay here, or I can sell this business and relocate to a more affordable part of town in East Van instead of right at the foot of the Granville Street Bridge. So that's what he had to do. And he had like a gear sale at the very end. I actually have a few mementos. Like I have like the old days when you were recording on tape and you used to edit, you would do splicing and there was like a metal bar that would go under it as a guide. He had one and it had a sticker with the old like 1970s version of the logo. And I was like, can I get this off you? He just like threw it in for free. But I bought a old Mesa Boogie tube amp from him. And what else I buy? I bought a compressor. And yeah, I got a few random sort of things. So one of these days I've got a lot of random music memorabilia. It's kind of not the point of this channel, but it would kind of be neat at some point, I guess, to do like a video like, here's all the random memorabilia and crap I've got. Here's my Guns N' Roses memorabilia collection. Here's my U2. Well, the U2 memorabilia isn't as impressive, partly because there's so much U2 shit out there. And it's hard to tell what's actually, what's legit and what's like third party, like knockoff and all this. But I do have some fun stuff. A lot of magazines basically for U2, but Guns N' Roses, I have got a lot of shit for Guns N' Roses, including like tour itinerary books and all sorts of stuff. So, anyways, that's kind of neither here nor there. But got some Motley Crue as well. What else have I got? Can't remember if I bought the Billy Idol Cyberpunk tour itinerary book or I just dithered on it and somebody else got it. But got some Duran Duran shit as well. Like, anyways, that's kind of beside the point, but point is, I do have some Mushroom Studio memorabilia from that sale. Um, so you're just showing a couple of amps that are just kind of right as you go in the door to the studio loft. And I'm going to have to remember that this is what I drew up there, because the next page is going to show a closer view of this angle. Anyways. Oh yeah, well I was mentioning this is part the control room, not the control room at Mushroom. Oh, break out the red pen again. So the actual control room, you would go out, you went up like 3 steps onto the actual, like where the SSL board is and whatnot. So that was that, you know, all the faders and all the buttons and shit. Anyways, back here, then you have the monitors sitting on the back of that. But down here on actual ground level, there was like a pass through. The vocal isolation booths were on the side here. And then the live room here, you had your wall with the windows are always triple, and these two angle out or in to bounce the sound differently. But right here, this was like the nastiest 1970s brown. Uh, Hopefully, it was actually supposed to be brown as opposed to just disgustingly filthy, but long ass shag carpet. You know, which, of course, you want. In some ways, you want that because it absorbs the, it's sound dampening, which is good for the acoustics. But you definitely want to walk on it barefoot. I'm sure the interns were made to shampoo that carpet, but I'm also sure there's probably, you know, weed roaches and stuff like that, and possibly roaches in there from decades past. But anyways, I visited Mushroom a couple times when other people I knew were working there, and then I did have before it closed. I did spend one day where I booked it, and um, I was working on the album that would become the last Maclu album, Divisive. And initially I was kind of debating tracking vocals in it. The only thing is, when I was doing vocals, I had to record them myself in absolute privacy. So like I'd record them at my jam space at like 3 in the morning when nobody else is there. So like I was kind of psyched that, oh, maybe I'll actually record vocals and let the assistant engineer, whatever, blah blah blah. And then I got there, and I knew the guy. I worked with him on other stuff, but he was in the mix room, which had previously been the lounge that got turned into the mix room. And we were not getting along at that point, and the control room thing, it's kind of soundproof and whatnot. But I could also, if you really stuck your head right next to the door, you could kind of hear what was going on. So I was just envisioning asshole sitting out there and making comments if I went out to use the kitchenette or the bathroom. You missed the note there, or what? Anyways, I was just like, wasn't in my headspace. So what I did was I took a bunch of synthesizers I'd already recorded and I reamped them. And then I set up mics in weird spots because there was like a echo. It's not actually called. It kind of is an echo chamber, but it was like a little concrete box sort of thing that you could pump the sound into and record, and then put mics over the 2 sides of the piano to catch the resonance off of that, and a few different. And anyway, so I ran it through different amps, and you know, it was a bit of a weird setup, but I kind of knew it's like, okay, I'm doing this basically to say I recorded at Mushroom Studios. And I did think I was going to use that footage, or that, not footage, but that audio on Divisive, except I just found I could not make it fit. Like timing wise, I could make it fit, but sonically, it just, I don't think there. Trying to think, maybe taxidermy had a little bit of it, but I don't think even on taxidermy, which is like one of the very creepy sound tracks on that album, I don't think I actually put any of that into it. So it was kind of a waste of $500 was the day rate. And that wasn't the actual day rate was higher. I got the friends and family rate. Because I knew the guy who ran it. But anyways, I actually have those. At one point, I'm actually debating. I don't know if I was doing a. I have an idea about like tips and tricks kind of podcast I might start. Right now I don't have time to work on it. But it's something I may start at some point. So I may have to go re-listen to those and sort of pick out, is there any of the synth stuff there that I could use, but then it might also just sound too weird and creepy and kind of alienate people and then nobody will listen and blah, 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 blah. So I don't know. But it's something that still lives on my hard drive. And I also took like, I think I took 100 or 200 photos, like, because in those days we had like Firewire external hard drives, and like copying from the studios to mine at the end of the night was like an hour and a half and whatnot. So I just wandered around and took photos in the live room and whatnot because, hey, I had paid for renting the live room. And I knew at that point everybody knew the studio was shutting down, right? So every so often, like I did actually go and look, like this part is based on Mushroom. So, yeah. It's one of those things that just kind of disappears from Vancouver and, I mean, if you like Skinny Puppy, that's where those guys practically lived at Mushroom in the day. Dave worked there. And then, in the wee hours of the morning, the Kevins and Dwayne would come and they would get really fucked up and play with synthesizers. And actually, there's something on Much Music when they were doing a profile of Skinny Puppy. There was one that was actually filmed in Mushroom, and the room had completely not changed. I remember taking a tour at one point, and I was just like, Dwayne Gattell stood in this exact spot. And the funny thing is, that spot was actually, yeah, anyways. There's a legend that Mushroom is haunted. I don't know that it was haunted by Dwayne. Possibly. But I think most of the stories I heard about there being a ghost, it apparently had been there since the 60s. But there are definitely a couple spots where it suddenly felt very cold and there weren't any air vents or whatnot around that area, and like the hairs on the back of your neck would stand up, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a long, long time ago. I joked with some of my friends here that when this book is done, I'd be very tempted to see if I could find mailing addresses for some of the guys I used to work with, and just, well, I was thinking I would send it to them anonymously, but I mean, my name's going to be on the book. Like, I'm not using a pseudonym, so it'd be like, oh, Pyrrha did a fucking graphic novel. What the fuck? You know? So it probably wouldn't make any sense to do it anonymously. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's going like, why is there such a big gap? It's like, it's kind of supposed to be like one of the steps is missing, which it was not the case at like Mushroom. It wasn't that bad. But in Rat Trap Studios, we're assuming things were very shoddily built. So you're missing a step going up. Hey, Pyrrha, when you draw the next page in an hour, well, I don't know, actually. We may not get to the next page today. next week. Um, I need to remember that I've made the step like this so that we have continuity. Um, anyways, perspective on this is going to be kind of weird and messed up, but that's okay. Anyways, I mean, I'd have to see. I may kind of like lost touch with a lot of the guys I knew at that point, and at least three of them are dead now. But I may well it'd be kind of fun to send copies of this book to some of those studios, some of the people I used to know. We'll see about it though, because yeah, I could see some people being offended, going like, "Am I supposed to be Big Mike?" And be like, "Well, I will if you think, if the shoe fits, but not necessarily actually supposed to be Big Mike type of thing." Uh, and certainly, I can think of at least one individual from back then who I have not had any contact with since 2013, and I intend to keep it that way. So, I would definitely not send him a copy. I've blocked him on like all my social media. We're not going to get into that story. But yeah, I wouldn't send it to everyone I used to know from back then, but certain people who have, a sense of humor, I might. It'd be one of those things because actually, I can think of a couple of the guys I used to know where they actually kind of keep tabs on people they used to know. I think it's more people who stay in the music business side of things because it's like if they think you're going to suddenly have a massive hit, they want to be the one to get that credit, right? So it was actually kind of funny at times to see, when somebody hasn't given a person the time of day in like 5 or 10 years, and suddenly it's like, hey, buddy, long time no see. All you can do is laugh. Although I guess you could also do if you're familiar with South Park, the thing with Terrence and Foot and Philip, like, I'm not your buddy guy, I'm not your guy, friend, making fun of how Canadians talk, which is, actually not that far off the mark with some people. But, anyways, it would be interesting when some of these books come out to see who turns up in my DMs. We'll just put it that way. Hopefully none of them, but well, I mean, one or two of them would be kind of nice to chat with and catch up with, but mostly let sleeping dogs lie, and lie they will. Anyways, so we've got this sort of we've got the two tapestries here. We've got the ladder of doom going up to the storage loft. Oh, and the other thing, Christmas lights. That is like so many studios. It's kind of a cheap way to get colorful mood lighting. The other thing you see a lot of is lava lamps. So I'm just trying to see if there is. Kind of looks like at some point there was supposed to be a poster here. Or I think I had drawn a poster and then I decided I wasn't going to have, that I was going to have this instead. Yeah, I'm about to regret drawing this line because I got to actually go over it, but I can also turn the thing. So you know what? I'm going to outline this last bit of narration, and then I'm going to turn this on its head, or turn it on its side, so it makes it a little easier to get at the stairs while that dries. So yeah, this particular view is kind of an amalgam of a few different places that I once well, I wouldn't say frequented, but hung around in occasionally. There. So yes, let's turn this on its side so that I can get out, finish this little thing. This is all supposed to be built with like 2x4s and like randomly screwed in. It was not uncommon, from what I could tell, to get your assistant to do like basic carpentry work and stuff, even if he really wasn't qualified. So, yeah. I mean, I will say, the whole thing with like Christmas lights and lava lamps and whatnot, I still kind of go by that. I have a tiny, well, it must have been like a little kid's bedroom at some point that's really small. It's upstairs is like, I'd be surprised if it's all of 7 feet. It's probably more like 6.5, by 9 or 10 upstairs. So I've got, that's the room that I've put some foam on the floor and stuff like that. And there's heavy curtains to absorb sound. So when I do podcasts and voiceovers, I record them up there. Um, and it's got all my old audio gear and whatnot. But you know what's in there for lighting? Aside from like the actual proper room lights, I have lava lamps. And if I am going to be recording, certainly if I'm recording music, the lava lamps have to be on. It's just, that's the rule. I didn't make it up. Somebody did in the 70s, but that is the tradition. Um, okay, so we got that. Actually, I think that's probably mostly dry enough. So, yeah, we got that. Yeah. I am purposefully making these stairs look like they're very poorly built and uneven and probably death traps. Well, like it says, they were built by a drunk intern in 1972, so you know. And if you are worried at all about going up and down these stairs, well, that just means you're a pussy, right? All right. So and of course, it's going to be have some shadow underneath here. Whoops. And we'll just leave it with just the guitar case, I think. We'll give the ISO booth the same nasty shag carpet. Why not? Do a little smear because that is supposed to be glass. And then yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to show. Some like cracks in the walls and stuff. Don't want too much of that, but you want a little bit of it. And also there should be some plugs in random spots. Add in, because this is going to be like foam, but I'm going to put in like the dotting first, and I'm going to do, you know, where they have the almost like the basket weave where you put the tiles in different directions. They have grooves in them, ones that kind of look like, if I move this over, but you know, the ones that were the side view, they kind of look like that. They're made out of the same kind of foam as, you know, mattress toppers that have that kind of egg crate look. In fact, I would say I do think the acoustical foam is denser, but if you're trying to build a isolation booth in your bedroom closet or something, and you want to do some audio stuff, honestly, order a few, go to like Yisk or, you know, on Amazon and order a few of those egg crate kind of mattress toppers. They'll be cheaper than acoustic foam. You can glue those up. Yeah, I mean, you can also, what some people do is like build out like a box with 2x4s, you know, and cut the mattress topper in pieces, right? And then you would put it in. So, like, I know mine has kind of like a section that's like that, swirly, and then like that, and then somewhere it's got the egg cratey kind of whatnot. But you could cut it into quarters, stick it into, uh, you know, build a box that's got, and I'm not an acoustics expert, I'm just suggesting this as a cheap thing to try. Take 2x4s, get, for the bottom layer, get some of that insulation foam, the kind that is like silver on one side. It's basically super thick styrofoam that's like that. You can cut that into pieces. Actually, you would put, I would say put that in between the studs, and then put your drywall, and also put that on the floor and on the ceiling. And then you could build out these panels, but you could put another layer of foam, you know, for that. And then you put your egg cratey thing on top. And then if you want it to look nice, you can like wrap that in like some sort of a fabric that looks nice, staple, you know, glue it on the back, put it into your frame, and hang that on the wall. You would do a few of those. But anyways, that's one way to do it. There's various ways to do at-home acoustical baffling. But, you know, just a few suggestions. But the pros tend to go with these acoustical tiles. It's also when I used to do college radio. That's what we had at CITR Radio in the in our booths. I assume they still do in the new studio. And if you have cheap ass jam spaces, what they usually do is they'll like subdivide a larger space with basic wood framing, and then what they put on the walls is it's not really like sheetrock, but you can get it there. They'll pretend, I think Home Depot pretends it's soundproofing, but it's basically, it's the stuff from bulletin boards, but it's not real cork, but you know, it's basically pressed paper. It does absolutely nothing for soundproofing. I mean, you can use that as part of your setup, but I mean, you would need to have actual baffling and whatnot. But anyway, so we're doing this texture because that's going to be a foam thing. And I've got these squiggles just more implying that the door is glass, which it is. So we have that. Now what I'm going to do, I think for these, I'm going to use the medium nib, and I'm just going to draw kind of like the shadow lines. Actually, no. First, I'm going to draw in the tile outlines, or else these are not going to be even. So, I know me. I know that it's funny. I always get friends saying, I can't draw a straight line. I get that also from, I got that from one of my friends from church, who's actually a fairly talented painter of like landscapes and birds in particular and flowers and stuff like that. I think she works kind of from photo references, and I don't know if she uses a projector to trace onto canvases, but you know what? That's what all the pro painters do too. Everybody just pretends that they don't. But anyways, she was saying to me, because she found out I was a cartoon, she's like, man, when I was a kid, I wanted to do cartooning, but I couldn't draw a straight line. I said, well, you don't. You just draw wiggly. You purposefully make it wiggly. Like here. The trick is, don't try and draw a straight line. Draw a line that is deliberately off. But anyways. Now these tiles, sometimes they sell them that are 2 feet square, but I've also seen them as 1 foot square. So here we're assuming these are the 1 foot square ones. So that already looks a lot like a professional ISO booth, but we're going to make it look more so. Yeah, this is the medium one. No, that's too thick. Okay, I need to go for the one that's a little bit thicker, but not too much. I'm using well, not all the nibs, but all the nibs that are on pen holder sticks today. Man, this is starting to look real. I can almost smell the stale beer and the weed and the scent of old pizza. Where did I buy that pen? First of all, hello, Javon. Um, this is one of the, you can get them at various art stores, or Michael's will have them, the speedball kits. So they'll come with the stick. Some of them will also have a smaller version like this, and, 5 or 6 different nibs. So I've got a few of them because over the years I've collected tons of those kits. But Amazon, if you search on Amazon for speedball dip pen or speedball nib set, you should be able to find them on there. Like I said, Michael's, art supply, different art supply stores often will have them as well. So it's a bunch of places to get them. The kits should be roughly $20 with the stick and a few different nibs. Kind of depends on, well, I'm talking US dollars would be about 20, Canadian about 25. So they're not that bad. And um, I mean, I've got nibs that I've had since, you know, the mid 2000s. So they do last a long time as well. Okay, so that's that. I'm just thinking, should we add a little more grime? Let's add a little more grime. Just make things look a little dark and questionable, seedy. Uh, Trying to put a little more shadow in under the stairs because this area would probably be kind of dark and whatever. This actually bumps out in ahead a little bit. Like these two sections aren't really flat in my opinion. I think it kind of jags out a little bit, in which case actually I probably should have done the stairs a little differently, but whatever. Just gonna quickly dig out. It's not really a reference photo per se, because it's a drawing I did, but it's a drawing I did from a reference photo at Mushroom Studios, which, whoops. Um, Hopefully I'm looking in the right place. Okay. So I did a drawing or a video of this a while back. So this is the corner of the live room at Mushroom Studios. Now I've added Ricky, my character Ricky, in napping, sleeping off some booze, but this is kind of a corner where they had a bunch of stuff shoved in. These are baffles. Yeah, if I was going to draw in actually I probably could draw some because these would jut out enough that I think you would have space. So maybe I am going to draw in some baffles, kind of tucked in next to the stairs. Be a good place to store them. And then there's there were some curtains at the back, although I think 1 or 2 of those did have like a skinny window, but the curtains were a lot bigger than the window. But that was not intended. But it actually kind of, yeah, you can make that kind of work. Make it look like something was spilled there. So if we had a baffle in the back, it's going to look a little bit like it's not like nothing unless you kind of know what what it actually is. So they tend to have a wood frame, and then they tend to kind of go like that. Assume the things like that, and actually, you know what? Not happy with the baffle. I'm just going to kind of put that area into shadow. It's a nice thing. You kind of start it and you go, yeah, no. So we can knock that back. So that's kind of looking darker. This actually needs a shadow where it actually touches the wall, because otherwise it just looks like it's floating. Make some like marks that could be scuffs or whatnot. Especially if you're hauling gear around, you're probably gonna bash some things. I do need to put a little bit of shadow on it underneath each of the treads there. So it'd probably be overhanging just a little bit, right? That kind of works, eh? We will have another little crack up there. Perhaps Ratsville is in a seismic zone like Vancouver is. All right, I think we're gonna call it there. So we did only get through the 2 drawings, but let's have a look at them again. So the first one is one of the ads that interrupts the story that will become part of the B story. And that is the ad for Diorat, Make That Prick Pay Up. I may end up taking out the up and just use Photoshop to shift that to be centered. I don't know. This, after all, for anyone who missed the beginning, is a reference to the last drawing we had last week where the studio owner, Big Mike, is in vacation in Paris with his wife for their anniversary. She finds some text messages and beats the shit out of him, but also then goes and spends a bunch of his money at overpriced designer boutiques. So, and Diorat is one of them. So now we have an ad for Diorat because we've been having ads pop in and interrupt the story at various points that where the ad relates to what the story is, kind of a play on the intrusive ads we get and all that sort of stuff. So, let just see something. I'm not going to do it with a dip pen because I'm going to be lazy, but I think her diamond ring needs a couple of facets here, right? So there. Yeah, there we go. Anyways, so it's kind of inspired by several Dior ads from the 1990s that I saw when I was doing some search. I got a couple of spots I got fixed in Photoshop, but whatever. So that was the first page we did. And then we get back to the story, and Big Mike is back in Ratsville. He's all pissed off. He took it out on Ricky, who's our narrator and the main character, and the other assistants and runners and interns and whatnot. He told us to clear a bunch of junk out of the storage loft of the studio, right up there. You know, the one tucked away behind the wall above the ISO booths next to the main live room. The one with the questionable, narrow, steep stairs and the rickety ladder to get up there. I told you about that, right? Well, no, he hasn't, not yet in this story. But now we have it, and there's the ISO booth, the foam, texture, and all this sort of stuff. So that is going to be it for tonight's stream. I'm just going to leave that there for a moment. Well, I'll bring back Diorat, and so we have something that I drew today. I think this is all dry. And then that's the live stream schedule. Next week, as far as I know, I'm not missing any streams, just like I didn't this week. So we will be back on Monday. We will be finishing up the current phase of the Miles book, this being Miles, That's Ricky, Noah and Ursula from my other project. We've been working on Miles Marv's Pursuit of Happiness, where I've been doing a 2-page spread or 2 separate drawings every week, going through alphabetically. Monday, we are working on Z or Z, depending on your geographical preference. So that's going to finish the current phase of that book. Then I have to take what I've drawn and write some short stories that tie various pieces together. While I'm doing that, I'm going to switch over to a new Ricky and Miles project, wherein actually these stairs will come up and be part of it. Well, not these stairs, but similar stairs going down to the basement. This is in the live room. So there's another set of stairs going to storage in the basement, which is kind of a big deal in that story. That shows up only about halfway through it. But anyways, so that's going to be in 2 weeks. But this Monday, we are finishing up Miles Marv's Pursuit of Happiness, Phase 1. Tuesday, my other project, Noah's Archipelago. We are working on the Noah's Archipelago Book of Days project. And we are also finishing up phase 1, which will be the December full page illustration. And then I, again, need to go do a whole bunch of writing, but we will then the week after be starting a new Noah illustration project on Tuesday nights. Wednesday this week, or this coming week, we are starting we just finished this week, a project or illustrations for projects for some of the destroyers. So we are starting next week a new project illustrating a story I wrote a long time ago, Zalmo, The World According to Zalmo. So Zalmo gives a history lesson on the planet, and we will be illustrating that. Then Thursday, Noah's Archipelago, we will be working on a couple more coloring pages work based on Noah's job history. And then next Friday, we will be carrying on with what comes after this page. And hopefully we'll get through 3 pages next week. It all depends on the amount of detail, right? But definitely 2, possibly 3. So, thank you for watching. If you made it this far in the stream, thank you for your patience. Just as a little heads up, I will, first of all, I'm just seeing something that is kind of annoying me. I'm going to thicken up the line of this model's thumb so it's not kind of blending into her hair. But as I do that, I will just sort of say, for this stream, anybody who missed the beginning of it and wants to rewatch or whatever, what I do is I save it as private so that YouTube can do its thing with all the video processing and all that jazz. So it will be private until tomorrow afternoon or so, whenever it finishes that. And I say that, and I don't think I've made yesterday's Noah stream public yet because I was running errands and then I ran out of time. But I will get that done either tonight or tomorrow morning. But in any case, you can usually watch the stream the day after, or in worst case scenario where I get distracted and busy, 2 days after I do make them public again once the processing is done. So there's my whole spiel and whatnot. And that's it for this week's show. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you again real soon. Bye for now.